Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another video podcast here on the War Bonds channel. If you're new to the channel and don't know me, my name is Eric. I'm a locomotive engineer by profession, an avid model railroader, and just a lifelong rail enthusiast. My channel is all about railroading, whether it's model railroading, prototype railroading, just about anything that constitutes railroading, you'll probably find on my channel, if not now, eventually. However, most of the stuff that I do is model railroading, and most of it is in 1-inch scale. Now, the big thing that started the major interest in my channel was the construction of a 1-inch scale Santa Fe GP60M locomotive. Now, many of you are probably asking what happened to that project, how come I haven't been talking about it for a while, and it's due to time and financial constraints. I have a friend in Texas who's actually doing some behind-the-scene work with this locomotive, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to get the time or the finances to get down to Texas just yet. But hopefully, no later than April, I'll be making a trip down there. I will definitely be taking you on location as we try to get this bad girl finished up. Now, even if she looks like a Frankenstein for a while, the whole point of that trip is to actually get it running, operational, get a lot of new parts welded on it so that it actually looks like a real Santa Fe GP60M locomotive. I've also had some suggestions from other people of little touches that I can add to it once it's actually operational, which I'm going to save for later, but I'm sure that you guys will have your eyes popping out when you see some of the things that we have planned for it. So this project has not been forgotten. It's just on the back burner temporarily, but hopefully no later than April, we'll be working on it again. Now, recently I also started a passenger car. Unfortunately, that one went on the back burner as well, partially due to the fact that we've had sub-zero temperatures around here that just didn't make it conducive to go outside to do any kind of sanding. I had one suggestion that I should try to get an exhaust fan to be able to do work inside the house, but it's a 7-foot car, so I don't have the money to find an industrial size fan that large in order to sand in the house, so it's just going to go on the back burner as well. Now, I've gone into my basement because I have about 3 projects down there that I started probably a couple years ago, maybe even beyond that. One of the things that I resurrected was a Santa Fe 50-foot excess height boxcar. Now, the Santa Fe actually called these cars excess height cars instead of hiatus because they were cars that were taken from 1940s, 1950 builds and had the roof line chopped off and about a 3-foot or so extension added onto the top. Now, because they still had peaked roofs, they weren't considered high cube cars like our modern high cube cars that are squared. But I remember as a kid, when I was a wee little lad back in the old country of Ireland. Oh, don't do that? Oh, my child says that I have a bad Irish impression there, so okay, I won't do that. But anyway, on the serious note of things, when I was a kid growing up in Galesburg, Illinois, there was a factory there called Admiral. And the Santa Fe had a contract with Admiral that they would spot boxcars into their plant in order for these cars to be loaded with household appliances. So your washers and dryers, your stoves, your refrigerators, your freezers, all that kind of stuff Admiral made. The Santa Fe had a contract with them to be able to haul products out of there and when they were loaded, and also spot empties in there to be loaded. So as a kid, I remember sometimes being in the car with my mom and dad, and we would be on the west side of Galesburg driving by the Admiral plant. And I would see all these Santa Fe boxcars, had to be at least 2 dozen, if not more, in a small yard. And I always wondered what they were doing. But as a little kid, I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. But over the years, I realized what I saw. And these cars just fascinated me because they were so big. Well, one of the things that I remember, I think at least once seeing, was a switch engine actually blocking one of the crossings to actually shove cars inside the building. And of course, as a little kid, I'm like, wow, there's a train going inside a building. Wow, this is phenomenal. But it's a memory that stuck with me for many, many years. So let's go back probably maybe 10 plus years ago. I was in a hobby shop owned by a friend of mine in Lincoln, Nebraska called Randy's Roundhouse. And he had just gotten in a shipment of exact rail boxcars. And one of these cars was a Santa Fe excess height car. Now, the car that Exact Rail put out isn't exactly what these cars were, but it's a very, very close representation. So, not to knock Exact Rail, but I still bought this car anyway because I thought, wow, look at this. This is great. This reminds me of my childhood, these cars that I used to see. So, I actually bought one, and it stayed in my basement for years and years because at one point I was actually going to scale it up as a G-scale car when I was still doing a lot of G-scale stuff. However, when I started getting into 1-inch scale, I thought, this is what's going to happen. This is where I'm going to take that car and really scale it up. So I started working on this whole project, got the poplar wood that I normally make my cars out of, and really started going to town on this thing. It was actually even supposed to be part of a magazine article for a major magazine, but until things just didn't work out, I thought, you know what, I'm still going to do what I can to finish this project on my own. I'm still going to do what I want to do with it. So I had some new ideas that I came up with thinking that, wow, you know, I'm going to do some things that are maybe somewhat unheard of or somewhat rare, you know, especially in the scale that I'm in. And I got a lot of things started, but then I kind of got to a point where I got bored. And I tend to do that sometimes. My personality starts a project, I get really gung-ho about it, and then something happens, and then I kind of put it to the side. But I do always come back to it later on. So anyway, I happened to resurrect this car here in the last few days and had to do a little bit of sanding on it, but luckily the temperatures are getting a little bit better to where I was actually able to go out, do a little sanding on it, and start adding some extra detail to it. However, at this point, I'd like to take you back to about 2 years ago when I actually started this car. And I actually have some still in progress photos and even some videos of some things that I was going to do to it. But at the time, I wasn't totally sure how I was going to do it. So essentially, I'm bringing you back to my mindset of where I was as I was getting this project started. So this car is actually called a BX127, which is what the Santa Fe called it as its new model designation after it was converted from a standard height car to an excess height car. So come along with me and we're gonna go back 2 years and work our way forward to this BX127 Santa Fe excess height boxcar. So here we see the actual production model on which I based the start of the project. And in this view, we literally see the model on my laptop as I was comparing and contrasting the model to the prototype. Now, not knocking Exact Rail, but this model is not an exact Santa Fe prototype, but I still used the basic dimensions to start my project. And now we see a little photo montage of some BX158s. Now, I said I was doing a BX127, but for the most part, if you're looking at one, you're looking at the other, and there's only some very subtle differences between the two. Now, this is a photo that I shot from a book that I have about Santa Fe boxcars. And I'm actually basing my project off of this because I like the large lettering, especially the large shock control lettering. And now we come to the way I made the ends and the inside support. I cut everything in halves and put everything together so that everything is perfectly symmetrical. And now we see the ends and the inside support coming together. Now, for the most part, I think that everything came together quite well. However, when you start a project, especially something that you've never done before, there's times that you start thinking, why did I do it this way? What was I thinking? But for the most part, I'm happy with the way this part of the project went together. And now we see the sides of the car and all the pencil lines that I drew on it to represent where the seams are. And later, we'll see how I handled that part of the car. I'm trying to make the underframe, the center sill of the underframe, slide because it's supposed to be like a cushion underframe. So basically, this part, it's gonna kind of slide back and forth. But as it pushes in, it's actually gonna be pushing against a spring here. So, of course, then I have to put something down there to keep the spring in place. But basically, yeah. So it's gonna slide into the spring there. Now, what I need to do here is to have this so that this is where the screw is going to be centered when it mounts the truck to the frame, and I basically need this to be able to kind of slide, have room so that the sill will slide back and forth. So I want to be able to clean all of this out here. So as you can see, I finally figured out the right tooling, which was actually a little jigsaw that was strong enough to be able to cut out the opening the way I wanted it. So as we can see here, everything came together just fine. And in the next clip here, you'll see the actual movement. And now we see the movement with the truck attached. Now the next step was to figure out a way to make the dreadnought ends. Initially we were going to 3D print them, but that didn't work, so I ended up doing everything by hand. It was kind of a tedious task, but it ended up working out pretty well. Once I had everything cut, I used a router and a hand sander to kind of round the edges. And we can see everything laid out here. Welcome to my front yard. This is probably the first time in about 3 weeks that I've actually been able to get out here because we finally got past all the sub-zero temperatures and it's a nice warm 45 degrees in which I can actually be out here without a jacket. And as a matter of fact, with the sun shining down on me, it makes it feel like it's about 60 degrees right now. So it's feeling really good, and it's a great day to be out here with the model. Well, as I said earlier, we're going to talk about something riveting. Well, we're going to talk about rivets on this car here. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the exact rail car was the basis of getting the basic dimensions of this car, the length, width, height, so forth. However, there were a lot of differences. And in the exact rail model, I think they represented a model that is a prototype, but not exactly prototypical for the Santa Fe. So they show having welds on there. Well, this car actually has rivets. So after giving it a lot of thought, do I want to go through the painstaking task of putting rivets on here, or do I just want to do simple welds? Well, after a while, I decided, let's just do it the right way and go through the painstaking task of putting rivets on here. So if you might be able to see it here, I know I'm a little distant here, but we're going to get closer anyway. But as you can see here, you might see a bunch of dark lines, but a lot of these are actually rivets. There's a few areas at the bottom here that I haven't put on yet, but I've probably been at this for about 4 or 5 days off and on. And this is just one side. I haven't even started the second side yet. So I'm probably going to use the second side to show the demonstration as to how I actually got the rivets on here. Okay, so I changed the angle just a little bit here just so I can keep my shadow out of the shot here. But as you can see here, it looks like a bunch of dark lines. And you might still see the remnants of pencil lines, but the closer we get, we can actually see these are actual rivets. Now in the center there, I still haven't completed the door portion of it yet, but this is just the rivet section that I'm dealing with right now. So in a minute here, we're going to take a closer look, and I'll show you exactly what I did in order to make the rivets and keep everything in perfect order. Okay, so right here, we have the opposite side of the car. I've put absolutely nothing on it, so this is a blank canvas for me to demonstrate how I do the rivets. So now, as you can see here, there are some grooves here, and if you remember in the beginning of the video, the stills, I showed how I laid out the sides, I drew all the lines to show where all the rivet seams were going to go. So after I did that, I took a straight edge and a scribing tool to actually scribe some grooves. That not only helped to really mark the areas that I needed, but also when I started sanding, it still gives me an area to show where everything I need is. So what we're doing here is we're going to take a pencil and we're just going to draw a line down here. And this just gives us a line, highlights the groove that we have here. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take this sheet of paper here. Now what I did is I went to the computer and I just started typing a bunch of dots, and I just went across one side, and then when it dropped down to the next line, I just kept drawing dots. Okay, so once I get those dots drawn, I then take an X-Acto knife and I cut strips out. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're actually going to take a strip here, and then we're going to take some cellophane tape here. Okay, so we get the cellophane tape out here. Whoops. Now, if I can do this without everything sticking to me and actually sticking in the right places, okay. Okay, so now we've got our line, our dots here, our line of dots here on the tape. So I'm just going to go to the top here, right about where the extension would begin on this car here. And I'm just going to line everything up. Okay, now let me actually raise this up a little bit here. Okay, so as we can see across, I have a faint pencil line up here across, and that's where the extension was added to the prototype, of course. So then I take my Dremel tool, the small bit here, and then we're just going to turn it on. And I'm just going to go right to the middle of each one. And I'm just gonna drill holes here. Now the key is to not go too deep, because when we pound the rivets in, we only want to go just so deep so that at least we have a small hole to start out with to mark where we want to actually place the rivets. Okay. Now we're going to take the tape off. Okay, I just took the camera off of the tripod here just so I could actually get in a little bit closer so that you can actually see where all the holes we drilled were. Now, is everything 110% accurate on the line? No, but it's close enough, and especially once the rivets go in, you'll actually be able to see that everything lines up. Okay, so now that we see where all of our holes that we've marked are with the drill, so we're going to use some Atlas track nails. Now, these work well because they actually have a rounded head just like a rivet. So I didn't go all the way to the bottom, but this is just for demonstration purposes, just to show exactly what we're doing here. So we've drilled a hole and we're on the line, on the groove there. Okay, there's one. Now, is this tedious? That's somewhat boring, not to mention time consuming? Absolutely. But this is one of the reasons that I do this kind of work, because I like to be able to create things. And I like the satisfaction of knowing that once I have finished a lot of tedious work, it's just more skills that I learn and more things that I'm able to do. Not to mention more patience that I tend to have after doing something like this. Now, of course, okay, that one actually went in well. Now, some people could say this is actually like watching paint dry, and it probably is. And as I say, I haven't finished the first one yet, the first side, so it's going to be a while. This is probably going to be another week's worth of work, but nonetheless, it'll be worth it once it's all done. But perhaps this is part of the reason why this project took, or sat in the basement, for the last, year and a half before I brought it back out again. So, if I get bored with something, well, then I just move on to the next thing. Okay, so we've gotten all of the rivets pounded in, and now I've taken some of that same paper template that I was using, and I'm going to actually add some more to the bottom here so that I can actually finish the entire row of rivets. So once again, we will All right. And then, with the addition of new holes, we'll just continue on. Okay, so we have managed to tap an entire row of rivets on just one of about 8 seams on this side of the car, and then of course we have another 8 over on that side. But yeah, this is probably going to take me at least another good week to be able to finish both sides on this, if not a little bit more, just depending on how much time I find to work on this. But it is not the most exciting thing, but given the nature of the beast here, it's not too bad. This is one of those things that I could actually do inside, but I wanted to bring it outside where the lighting was better and to be able to show you a little bit more of what I'm doing. But I could certainly sit down or watch a TV show while pounding rivets, so it's not like it's terribly bad, but there could be worse things. But anyway, this just kind of shows you what we got here and how we came about doing the rivets. And as you can see that as we stand back a little bit, I mean, everything is not 100% as straight as I would like it to be, but you know what? It's good enough for me. And even on the real ones, you know, if you were to get up close and personal with those, you'd probably see that they're not exactly 100% either. So we live in an imperfect world. Well, there you have it for today. So what we've actually done is gone through 2 years of a project that I've condensed down into roughly about 30 minutes. Now, I'm excited to have resurrected this project that's only been sitting for about the last year and a half. But there are times that I thought I needed to get this car out and I need to really start working on it again. I really need to finish it because I was really gung-ho about starting it, just like I am with any project that I do. But sometimes you just feel like, I know that this needs more to it and I can't just rush this. And if I don't feel like doing anything, then I'm not going to touch it. Well, sometimes it means waiting a year and a half before I touch it again from the last time that I did any work. Within that time, I've also had a lot of time to think about how to do certain things a little better, because there are some things that I see on this car that make me say, what was I thinking? Why did I do it this way? Or why didn't I put a little bit more time and care into putting this together? Or why didn't I rethink this? There's always going to be that. But in the meantime, I've done some other projects that I've started and completed in between to where I've gotten some confidence to know that, oh, yeah, here's the best way to do this. Now let me go back and do this. Or have told myself, if you want it done the right way, you're going to have to put the work into it. So that's what I've done, and especially that rivet work. That's probably going to be the single most tedious thing that I do on this. But I'm hoping to get all the rivet work done and pretty much get everything done that I need to have on this car, because there's actually a train show coming up in less than 3 weeks. And I've already been asked if I would bring some displays for it. It's happening in Lincoln, Nebraska on February 17th and 18th. So I was thinking that I could bring this car and show exactly what it looks like without paint, because that gives people an idea of, oh, well, he builds out of wood. Well, all I see are painted cars. Well, here you go. Here's a wood car that's got rivet detail, that's got grab iron detail, that's got everything on it, except it's not painted. And which the painting process is going to be a different story as well, because as I mentioned before, most of my lettering is done with my wife's Cricut machine. However, because of the fact that I'm putting all these rivets on here, that Cricut paper, that vinyl, is not going to lay flush over all those rivets. So therefore, I'm actually going to have to spray white and then maybe use the Cricut machine in order to cut out tape or maybe some semi permanent vinyl that I can put down and mask off, so when I spray the red that I can actually lift it off and it works. So I haven't decided how I'm going to do that yet, but you know, I'm looking forward to whatever it is that I come up with in doing this. So this should be definitely an interesting part of this project, but everything that I do has been interesting. So bear with me and I'll be certain to bring you along when we get to that point. But for now, that's what we've got. And I think what we're going to try to do is just go through, push through, kind of like that rotary snowplow that I showed you in the last video, which, by the way, thank you so much for all the likes and all the wonderful comments that I got on that. It was really a fun day, and I'm glad I was able to share that with you. Hopefully in the next video, we'll be making some even bigger progress on this project. Until then, if you enjoy this content, I really appreciate you being here. Welcome to the channel for those of you that are new. And if you love the content, I just ask you to please like and subscribe. It certainly helps the channel, and I appreciate all of you guys that have helped me grow. Until next time, we'll see ya.